Who are some rookies that you should keep an eye out for? And will any of these late round guys become the next superstar? Let's find out. What is going on, guys? This is Wade here with Hunkscat Gaming and Sports, and we are back with our sports podcast, episode number 6. So today, we will be talking about NFL rookies that you must know. So make sure you smash that thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, don't forget to turn on the bell so you don't miss out on any other content that will be coming out, and make sure you share. Get this out here, because the more views I get, the more subscribers I get, the more videos we will be able to pump out. So make sure you let others know if you like this content. But before we start off with today's episode, let's go over some news, some top headlines of the week. Starting off in football universe, we will be talking about NFL running back Dalvin Cook. So what's up with Dalvin Cook? Dalvin is holding out right now. He's wants a new deal. He's entering his 4th year in the league, and he is commanding some money. So what is he commanding? So Dalvin Cook is the running back for the Minnesota Vikings. He is a great running back when he's healthy, though. However, he has missed multiple games in every year he's played. His first year in the league, he only played in 4. 2 years ago, he played in 10 games, and then last year he did play in 14, so credit to him for playing in 14 games, but he still hasn't put together a 16-game season. He wants to be paid like Christian McCaffrey. Christian got $16 million per year, and the reports were that the Vikings initially offered him under $10 million per year, which that is obviously going to increase. I mean, he's probably going to get 12, maybe 13. I don't think he's not gonna get $16 million per year. Definitely not. He brings attributes like Christian McCaffrey does. He's a strong runner. He's got very good hands, but he isn't Christian McCaffrey level. I mean, that's not many people were ever that level like Christian McCaffrey is, and the Panthers took a huge risk in investing money in him. But McCaffrey hasn't missed anywhere near the amount of games the Minnesota Vikings have. So it will be interesting to see if Dalvin Cook plays this year, if the Minnesota Vikings pay him what they pay him. This is definitely going to be a story we will be tracking throughout the new year. And then we got one more note we want to talk about before we begin today's episode, and we're going to be talking about baseball. And unfortunately, yes, there is still no baseball, as last week it wasn't looking very good. This week, still not looking very good. So every day that passes, MLB is losing out on potential games played, obviously. Neither the owners or MLBPA can come to an agreement, and this is really starting to get frustrating from everyone, from fans, from players, and from owners. I mean, the fans are obviously the ones who are just getting annoyed. If you read the comments on Bleacher Report or ESPN, whatever article you want to about MLB and the owners not agreeing to terms, it's just, when will this nonsense end? Rob Manfred, though, the commissioner of baseball, he says there will be a 100% certainty baseball will be played this year. But in my opinion, he isn't doing enough to have that belief that he's going to get baseball going. We will more than likely play 50-ish games, I think. As I was hoping we could play an 82-game season, which would obviously be just like just like basketball. You know, that's fine. Just play the games. Just cut it in half. 82. You get this. You get that. A little bit expanded roster. But for some reason, they just can't agree to that, or they haven't even proposed it yet. So it's looking more like 50-ish games is probably going to be the max we get. I'd be really surprised if it's anything over 75. But if we do 50-ish games, I would like to see a college-type season, which would be rather interesting, in my opinion. if we can't get the 82 games that I'd like, as this would allow more teams to be playoff eligible and provide a little round robin type tournament until you get to the meat and the bones of the playoffs. So I think it'd be really, really interesting and just kind of like a fun, I don't want to say exhibition season, but just a fun, out of this worldly playoff season type to be. Round robins are always fun to play with, and you could have, a low team like the Cincinnati Reds, Pittsburgh Pirates, people who don't necessarily think we're going to do anything this year anyways, playoff-wise, maybe get a nice little run together. That could be really, really fun. And then, of course, having a playoff pool of money, you have to do that. You have to find some way to distribute some playoff pool money to the teams that advance far enough in the playoffs just to give them some incentive to play. Hopefully, something will be worked about eventually. And let me know in the comments, what would you like to see MLB do? If you were the commissioner of baseball and you could make this season be however you want, obviously not a 162 game season, be real now. If you could make them come to agreement, what would you want to see? What would you want to do? Alright, so before we get into today's episode, I'd like to lay out some ground rules. I only chose wide receivers and running backs. There is one quarterback, though. I'll leave that up to that slide when we get there. But I did choose running backs and wide receivers who will help you more than likely, and at least just someone to watch for in the fantasy/NFL season. I chose 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, 2 third-rounders, and then 1 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round player to keep your eyes out for. So we're going to go over 10 guys today, and let's kick it off with Justin Jefferson, wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. So Justin was drafted 22nd overall in this year's draft. He led the NCAA in receptions with 111, and he will replace Stephon Diggs in the offense, who Stephon, if you forgot or don't remember, he did get traded to the Buffalo Bills this offseason. So a little bit about Justin. Justin has played 3 years at LSU, but he didn't touch the field until 2018, his sophomore year. He had a solid first year as a starter, piling together 54 receptions for 875 yards and 6 touchdowns. However, just like every other player on that LSU offense, he exploded. And he also won't be the only LSU player we talk about. Justin exploded for 111 receptions, like I said, which led the NCAA, for 1,540 receiving yards and 18 touchdowns. And that wasn't even the most touchdowns either, as his teammate Jamar Chase led the NCAA with 20 touchdowns. So Joe Burrow was just back there throwing dimes left and right. He could not be stopped. Obviously, they went on to win the national championship. So it will definitely be interesting to see just how well all those players do. So Justin was the 5th receiver off the board, and you could argue that he could have been the first one off the board. CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, Jerry Jeudy from Alabama, Henry Ruggs from Alabama as well, and then Jalen Reagor from TCU all went before him. You have arguments, obviously. CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy and Justin Jefferson were pretty much 1, 2, and 3. Some variation. It was surprising to see Henry Ruggs and Jalen Reagor drafted before him. And actually, Henry Ruggs went before CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy too. So that was very surprising from the Raiders. And you had quite a bit of Eagles fans pretty upset they took Reagor over Justin Jefferson. So it will be interesting to see how those two players' careers will pan out, with them being drafted right by each other and many fans wanting Jefferson over Reagor. But nonetheless, I believe he is in the best position to succeed from day one with the departure of Stephon Diggs. That will free up 63 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So someone is going to have to take some of those. Obviously, Adam Thielen is going to be the number 1 target again, but he did have an injury-riddled season. So there is no guarantee that he's going to come back and be, the great Adam Thielen he was. Now, I'm pretty sure he will, but you do have to temper expectations just a little bit. Nonetheless, Justin will be successful. I cannot imagine him not having a great rookie season. As wide receivers, the rookie wide receivers, they tend to struggle just a little bit, but once they find their groove in the NFL, they take over. Look at Hopkins, look at Michael Thomas. Some of these guys, they really took over from their rookie year, and I think Justin can do just that. The Vikings, though, are definitely more of a run-first offense, but with Dalvin Cook holding out, they may have to spread it around more. You should absolutely target this man in fantasy leagues. I actually drafted him with my first pick in my Dynasty League, which was a pick 8 or pick 9, I believe. So he should be available to fall if anyone is looking at him. I will eventually go in more detail with fantasy football as we get closer to the season, but make sure you keep an eye on him throughout this off season. You definitely want to see, well, it is going to be kind of tough to see how he's doing, but definitely keep some tabs, keep some notes on him, especially as training camp. I think we're having a training camp. As training camp kind of gets closer to the preseason, really come August, we'll start hearing reports, of course. Now, for now, it's really just healthy. Just stay healthy, continue to work with Kirk and other valuable weapons on that team. But, like I said, if Dalvin Cook extends his holdout throughout the season, they're going to have to use their backups, Alexander Madison, and I'm not really sure who else is behind that Minnesota Vikings running back core. But, of course, Kirk Cousins will be leaned upon to continue to sling the rock out there without his star running back. So moving on to player number 2, that is going to be Clyde EdwardsHelaire. He is a running back. So he was drafted 32nd overall, first round pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. And this, those darn Kansas City Chiefs. Wait till we get into him and his stats. He has exceptional pass catching ability. He has a knack at finding the ball through his running back play style. And he was 9th in total scrimmage yards in the NCAA with 1,867 last year. So I promise this is the last LSU player I will touch over. It just goes to show how great this team was. Well, if there was one weakness on the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, it would be the backfield. Well, not so much anymore, as EdwardsHelaire. Man, we really got to get a nickname for this guy, as that's gonna be kind of tough to keep saying over and over. Clyde is an absolute monster. This guy reminds me of Maurice Jones-Drew, who, if you don't remember, MJD, he was also 5'7" as running back, as is Clyde. But what he lacked in height, MJD made up for everything else. He was a bruiser. He could catch the ball. He was the Jacksonville Jaguars offense, even though they stunk. The Jaguars were bad when MJD was on the team, but he was a bowling ball, and Clyde is exactly like that, in my opinion. And even a better version of MJD, and on a even better team, obviously. So Clyde, he played in a part-time role his sophomore season, rushing for 658 yards and 7 touchdowns while only catching 11 passes. It's not bad for a little bit taste of action. However, this past year he rushed for over 1,400 yards, 16 touchdowns, and he reeled in an outstanding 55 receptions for 453 yards. Even some of the best catching backs in the NFL didn't have 55 receptions in college, as utilizing that part of the backfield is not as common. So to see this ability coming from a guy already is absolutely eye-popping and very, very good. You want to see that. He was the first running back taken off the board, and this was extremely appropriate. He could have gone early. He could have gone way, way early in the first round, but the Chiefs is a perfect opportunity for him. Clyde will compete with Damian Williams, who the Chiefs signed off the street a few years back, Darrell Williams, and Darwin Thompson. If Clyde isn't the starting running back by week 3, then something is wrong. He should absolutely blow his competition out of the water, and the Chiefs would be wise to unleash him. Get him in your fantasy rookie draft. Do whatever you can to get this guy. Fantasy football redraft-wise, temper your expectations just a little bit. I'm not really sure where he's going. We will get into the running back depth later throughout the months, but keep a tab on him. You do not want to miss out on this player playing on the Kansas City Chiefs, who are an outstanding offense, so keep an eye out for him. Moving on to our first player in the second round and third player overall, that is going to be Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver. Michael was drafted in the second round by the Indianapolis Colts. He played all 4 years at USC, and he led the Pac-12 in receptions and receiving yards. As you can tell from the previous slide of the picture of Michael, he is a big-bodied target. Standing at 6'4", 220 pounds, he dares his opponent to try to out-jump him, and it usually doesn't work out in the opponent's favor. He has a similar build and playstyle to Mike Evans, although he wasn't as productive at the collegiate level. But to be fair, Mike had Johnny Manziel playing with him. For as much as Johnny Manziel did nothing in the NFL, he was an absolute beast at Texas A&M. So Mike had extremely good numbers. Regardless though, Pittman did enough to become a second round pick with pretty spotty quarterback play. His sophomore and junior year, he combined for 64 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. However, his senior year, he topped all of those combined stats, hauling in 101 catches for 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns. Obviously, this was the year he had his most reliable quarterback play, which helped tremendously. But, that's what you got to do. You got to take every opportunity you can and show these scouts, show these teams that you belong in the NFL, and Pittman did just that. This is a terrific pick for the Indianapolis Colts, as they have been lacking a true complement to speedster T.Y. Hilton. They have leaned on Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell, and Chester Rogers to be the second, third, fourth man up, and they have not really produced consistently enough to be leaned on upon that. Pittman finally gives the Colts another huge presence on the field. Phillip Rivers, which is just so weird to think about, left a very solid offense in the Los Angeles Chargers, and he may have stumbled upon an even more complete offense, as the Colts' O-line is one of the best. As a Texans fan, I am just a little worried about this Colts offense and defense in general, as you're definitely going to watch out for this team. They are not someone to be ignoring. Moving on to player number 4, that is going to be Cam Akers. He is a running back. So Cam was drafted late second round by the Los Angeles Rams. He started all 3 years at Florida State, and he rushed for over 1,000 yards twice. So Cam Akers, he was one of the most unheard of running back prospects from the average fan. If you don't really watch NCAA or keep up with it as much as I do and some other people, you probably aren't really sure who Cam Akers was, as that has more to do with his college than himself, as Florida State has been extremely underwhelming since Jameis Winston entered the draft, and Jimbo Fisher, of course, left for Texas A&M a couple years back. So Florida State has been sort of in a rebuilding process, as they've gone through a couple head coaches already. However, that did not stop Cam Akers from having productive seasons. All 3 years he started, and as a freshman he rushed for over 1,000 yards. Although he only rushed for 800 yards his sophomore season, he made up for it with a big junior year. He was able to rush for 1,150 yards, scored 14 touchdowns, and even caught 30 passes out of the backfield. Cam has entered into a great opportunity on the Rams, as they let Todd Gurley walk, who is now a member of the Atlanta Falcons, if you did not know. And they have Darrell Henderson, a third-round pick from last year's draft, and Malcolm Brown, who somehow has stayed with the team since being undrafted in 2015. So shout out to Malcolm Brown. Michael Brown, he played at the University of Texas. I remember watching him still. And he's just, somehow, I always find it interesting. I know this is a tangent, but listen. I always find it every year. I get the new Madden, look on the new rosters, and Malcolm Brown every year is with the team. It's crazy. And I'm really going to have to do more research on Malcolm just to see what he brings to the table, because the past 3 years, he's rushed for 200 yards. So what are you doing, Malcolm Brown? Shout out to you. More people need to do whatever you are doing to be successful in the NFL. Nonetheless, he isn't facing too stiff competition and could easily earn the starting role by week 1 in the NFL. Now, don't go spending an early or even a mid-draft pick on this guy, as you can probably get him with your second or last round pick in fantasy drafts. I don't think he will be a home run hitter like first rounder Clyde was, but a solid running back 2 for sure. Sean McVay, he hasn't been as successful since reaching the Super Bowl as teams are trying to figure him out. But McVay might have just a little bit more magic left in the NFL, and Cam Akers might be able to help turn that tide. Moving on to player number 5, and this will be the first player taken in the 3rd round of the draft. That is going to be Antonio Gibson, who was drafted with the 2nd pick in the 3rd round by the Washington Redskins. Antonio played wide receiver in college at Memphis, and he has elite return man skills. So Antonio didn't touch the field at Memphis until his junior year in college, and even still, it was nothing. It was just a cup of coffee. He had, I think, just only 6 receptions, so nothing. But his senior year, this past year, he finally got a chance, and boy, did he shine as bright as he could, and did well enough to become a day 2 pick instead of the projected day 3 slot. Antonio played all around the field his senior year as a wide receiver, tailback, and return man. He only caught 38 balls, but turned that into a ridiculous 735 receiving yards, which is 19 yards per catch. On the ground, he had 33 carries, but had 369 rushing yards for a whopping 11.2 yards per carry. And then as a return man, he had 23 returns for 645 yards with a 28-yard return average. So he is clearly an explosive threat anytime he touches the ball. And the Redskins, who are now being led by head coach Ron Rivera, former head coach of the Carolina Panthers, loves that style of play. This guy has similar traits to Christian McCaffrey, and when used properly, the sky is the limit. Dwayne Haskins is going to absolutely love this pick, as he is going to enter his 2nd year as the starting quarterback for the Redskins and will have a reliable safety valve just waiting to be used. I can't tell you how many times Cam Newton or any other quarterback, Kyle Allen, would check the ball down to Christian McCaffrey and he would turn a potential 2-3 yard loss to a 15-yard gain just all the time. Antonio can be similar to Christian McCaffrey. And I think that is going to help Antonio stay in the NFL. And he might even wind up being a starter as he faces incumbent starter Darius Geis, who is entering his 3rd year now, but has battled injuries throughout his short 2-year career. In a perfect world, Geis fulfills his starting running back role and then cedes pass catching duties to Gibson. But more than likely, Geis will get injured, and you better make sure that Gibson is on your team when that happens. This Redskins team isn't going to have much to play for as they're still fairly young and still in a rebuilding process. But that means they will probably be trailing at the end of the games, and Antonio will have a great opportunity to get those garbage time stats that fantasy players love. Moving on to player number 6, that is going to be Devin Duvernay, wide receiver. Devin was taken with the 92nd overall pick in the 3rd round by the Baltimore Ravens. He was a 4-year starter at the University of Texas, and he led the Big 12 in receptions and receiving yards. Being from Texas, I watch a lot of Big 12 football. High scoring affairs and tough rivalries, it's something to see. I remember hearing Duvernay's name every now and then when watching the Longhorns, and then boom, it turned into a multi-game sound. Duvernay with the catch, Duvernay with the clutch play, over and over and over, Duvernay with the touchdown. And so I started to zone in on him and was hoping the Texans would actually take him, but unfortunately the Ravens got him instead. So Duvernay's junior year, he really started being utilized as he had 41 catches for 546 yards and 4 touchdowns. Not too bad, as Sam Ehlinger finally, I can't remember if that was Sam Ehlinger's freshman year or his sophomore year. I think that was Ehlinger's sophomore year. So Ehlinger finally started to get in the ropes of it. Duvernay's senior year, he stepped up big time though and caught 106 receptions for 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. Duvernay is an extremely reliable target and is an excellent route runner. He doesn't have great speed or size, but he is quick and sharp in his cuts, giving him just the space he needs to reel in his targets. Lamar Jackson is now surrounded by great receivers as he has Hollywood Brown entering his second year, who takes the top off the defense, Mark Andrews, who is becoming one of the best receiving tight ends in the game, and a three-headed backfield led by Mark Ingram, Justice Hill, and newcomer J.K. Dobbins. Now you throw Duvernay in the mix, who should easily beat out Willie Snead for the number 2 role. The soon-to-be third-year quarterback Lamar Jackson has a great shot to reclaim the MVP trophy again this year, and perhaps even a Super Bowl appearance. The Ravens are must-watch football. Moving on to our first fourth-round quarterback, and that is going to be Jacob Eason, who, like I said, I didn't want to do quarterbacks, but I have to talk about this guy. This is more about what he can become, not what he is going to be this year. So Jacob was drafted 4th round by the Indianapolis Colts. He started his collegiate career at Georgia, then transferred to Washington, and he, in my opinion, is the best non-first round quarterback. So I want to point that out. Best non-first round quarterback. Technically, like I said, I'm cheating a little as this list is supposed to be all rookies who can contribute right away. But this pick, to me, has the most upside of any 4th round selection. So let's find out why. So Jacob began his career at Georgia. In his freshman year, he led them to a solid 8-5 record and a bowl victory over TCU. He threw for over 2,400 yards, completing 55% of his passes, and had 16 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Unfortunately for Jacob, he had a knee injury during the first quarter of his first sophomore game, and Jake Fromm took over and kept the starting job even when Eason became healthy. Fun fact though, well, not very fun for Jake, but fun for Jacob. Jacob Eason actually got drafted before Jake Fromm in this year's draft. So just kind of a fun little tidbit right there. So Jacob Eason decided to transfer, as most quarterbacks do, and had to sit out a year and then entered the 2019 season with the Washington Huskies. Eason did very good as he completed over 64% of his passes for 3,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, and once again only 8 interceptions. Now he could have stayed for one more year, but he opted to enter the draft instead. I'm not sure how I feel about this, as I think Jacob probably could have stayed another year at Washington and potentially become a 2nd or 1st round pick, but he got pretty lucky as a 4th round pick, ending up where he did, in my opinion. So Eason gets to sit behind Phillip Rivers for at least 1, possibly 2 years, and there are rumors that the Colts don't plan on trading Jacoby Brissett, but Jacoby is clearly the odd one out, and the Colts would be dumb to not try to move him, as Jacoby, he's done as much as he can with the Colts. I don't think he's going to do anything more, and Jacoby needs another opportunity to go out and show teams what he can do, as the Colts plan on starting Phillip Rivers for at least 1 year. So Jacob Eason is going to have an opportunity to study behind him, and Rivers is an extremely smart quarterback and will prepare Eason for the rigors of the NFL. Will it pay off? As a Texans fan, I sort of hope it doesn't, but if it does, I will absolutely enjoy this continued division matchups here on and here out. Moving on to player number 8, that is going to be Isaiah Coulter, wide receiver. He was drafted the late 5th round by the Houston Texans. He takes the top off the defense as he has 4.45 40-yard speed. And he played against FCS talent, though, while in college. So, I can't go a rookie hopeful video without at least talking about one of my team's draft picks. So, I'll choose Isaiah Coulter. So, Isaiah played his college career at Rhode Island, which is an FCS school, meaning they're still Division I, but they're just a tier below FBS. That doesn't mean collegiate players can't succeed at the NFL level. It's just a little bit riskier in taking them. But 5th round picks, 6th, 7th round picks, you can afford to take across some of those risks, especially if they were a 3-year starter at their college like Isaiah was. For his career, Isaiah played in all games his freshman year and produced 18 receptions for 200 yards. Not too bad. Sophomore season, he caught 42 receptions for 602 yards and 3 touchdowns. Finally, his junior year, he caught 72 balls for 1,039 yards and 8 touchdowns. Now, I had no idea Rhode Island had a team. I never even thought that they had college sports in general. It's just not something that I thought about. So I decided to do some research on Rhode Island. Well, they didn't have a very good year. They went 2-10 last year, and they lost all 8 games in their conference. But if not for Isaiah's play, they probably wouldn't have even won a game. So I already spent a whole episode dedicated to the Texans offense, so I'll be quick here. But I would be absolutely shocked if Coulter doesn't get an opportunity to play any as a rookie, mainly because of the injury risk involving Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. Because of that, he has a good chance to start a game or two, and it'll be fun to see if he can succeed. Last night, I was preparing for this podcast and decided to find out more about Isaiah Coulter, and I pulled up some of his highlights from YouTube. And of course, highlights are going to show best plays from all these players, but I was really impressed. He has very good leaping ability. He's 6'2", so he's a red zone target, and I think he will be a fun project to watch. Should be interesting to see if he can get anywhere going this year. Moving on to player number 9, that is going to be Isaiah Hodgins, wide receiver. Isaiah was drafted in the 6th round by the Buffalo Bills. He played all 3 years in college, and he ranks 2nd all-time in receiving touchdowns with 20. So Isaiah has the potential to be a steal here for the Buffalo Bills if everything goes their way. He has exceptional hands as he was targeted 156 times in college and only had 3 drops. He is also a tall target, standing at 6'3". He can be a red zone threat as he was targeted in the red zone 12 times and caught 9 touchdowns. His junior year, he put together 86 catches, 1,171 yards, and 13 touchdowns. He only was 4 touchdowns away from the school's all-time leading touchdown leader, Brandon Cooks, and Brandon went in the 1st round. He will face some challenges, though, when competing for a spot, as the Bills have John Brown and Cole Beasley returning, and then also have new trainee Stephon Diggs. He also has Josh Allen at quarterback, who is known to be fairly inaccurate at times, although his completion percentage jumped from 52% to 59% last year. So Josh is working on hauling in his throwing skills. Nonetheless, you can potentially see Hodgins working his way onto the field, perhaps around week 8, possibly, and he may command a role in 3 wide receiver formations by the time this year ends. But behind those 3 guys, there really isn't much competition as they have Isaiah McKenzie. Do they still have Robert Foster? I can't remember. So Isaiah should work his way into at least the number 4 role. And if Josh Allen continues to improve his accuracy, this team can be potentially dangerous. Also, Josh is very accurate on short and medium routes, and that is where Isaiah Hodgins thrives. So definitely keep an eye on this guy. It will be fun to see just what he can accomplish in the NFL. Moving on to our final player drafted in the 7th round, of course. That is going to be running back Ino Benjamin. So Ino was drafted with the 222nd pick by the Arizona Cardinals. His best year was his sophomore season as he led the Pac-12 in a plethora of stats, in rushing attempts, in rushing yards, in scrimmage yards, in touchdowns. He did great his sophomore year. He was projected to be a 5th-round pick, but unfortunately Ino fell in the draft. So Ino took the college world by storm his sophomore campaign as he rushed for over 1,600 yards and 16 touchdowns. He also caught 35 passes for 263 yards. Hoping for another big campaign the following season, Ino disappointed a little. However, he was rushing behind 2 starting true freshmen at offensive line. He was still able to put up 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, as well as 42 catches and 347 yards through the air. He also did struggle with ball security, which might have contributed just a little bit to his slide, but regardless, he put up back-to-back 1,000-yard campaigns, which hadn't been done since 1974 and 1975 for the Sun Devils. The Arizona Cardinals are a fun spot for him to land and give him a decent opportunity to get some playing time. Kenyon Drake is penciled in as the starting running back, and then Chase Edmonds will be backing him up for now. But the 3rd running back spot is wide open, and I fully expect Ino to grab it and even push Chase Edmonds for the number 2 spot. Ino has solid hands for running back, as he totaled 82 receptions and can be used in screens and quick hitters to try to get the ball in his hands. I have mentioned this before, but the Arizona Cardinals are going to be must-watch television this year. Kyler Murray is an electric threat and entering his 2nd year at quarterback. He now has dangerous wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins to throw to, and his head coach Cliff Kingsbury is becoming more comfortable in the NFL. Ino is certainly a player to watch and keep an eye on out throughout the NFL season. So we'll briefly go over the takeaways. So there were 255 players taken this year, and I only gave y'all 10 players to watch for. I am sure there are plenty I missed, but these were just some of the 10 guys that stood out to me, and I wanted to find players through rounds 1 through 7, as obviously, in my opinion, if you're drafted between rounds 1 through 3, you could even argue rounds 1 through 4, you should contribute no matter what. So I decided to give myself just a little bit more challenge, really eliminate quarterbacks. There really weren't any tight ends that I really liked seeing. One tight end to keep a name in general is Cole Kmet, but he went to the Chicago Bears, who have 10 tight ends on their roster. So, what are you doing, Chicago? So ignore that. But anyways, this is the first time that I've ever truly put together an evaluation like that. You know, I always say, oh, maybe this guy will be good, watch this guy, but I never wrote it down and looked back. So it's going to be pretty cool now that I actually had this out there on the web for people to see. So 3 years down the road, 2 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we'll be able to look back and see just how correct I was. Maybe I missed 1 or 2 of these guys that don't produce like I think they will. However, I am excited to see just what their careers look like, and it will be interesting to see what they can do. Next week, I have 2 video ideas I am contemplating. Not sure which one I want to do, so you will have to come back next Sunday and find out. Hope everyone enjoyed this podcast. If you did, make sure you smash that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share to get this information out there, as we will continue to do more episodes, and we will eventually dive into the fantasy aspect of football as we get closer down the road to the season starting. This has been Wade with Tongue Gaming and Sports. Don't forget to put God above all. I'll see you next time.